Okay, so now I'm going to discuss one by one. Just try to follow it. If you have any doubts, you can unmute and ask. Okay, so you can drop a text basically. So I'll just try to answer your questions. So first I'll discuss, then after that you can ask your doubts. So now the first question is, India has entered a phase of sub replacement fertility. So India is already entered, but it is asking with deep rooted regional, caste, class, and tribal and religious differentials. So now what you will be writing in the intro, you will be supporting the statement that is given. So India's demographic transition is a complex paradox. While you see the national aggregate, okay, you will write that while we notice or while we see the aggregate of national total fertility ratio is, or total fertility rate has fallen below 2.1. Okay, and the microstatic things are not included here, because if you see anthropologists and demographers, they say that there are differentials which were used to be present in the past are no longer driving. See what used to happen, there is a general notion, right? Some religions tend to have more number of children, and some religions people tend to have more number of children. These kind of notions used to be present in the past. So what anthropologists say today is the differentials that used to be there are no longer driven. The differentials are no longer driven by cultural essentialism. That means the culture is not driving much, but by structural inequalities. But by the structural inequalities in political, economical, healthcare access. So political access, economical access, healthcare access, and the female agency. So you can write all this. See, I am giving you the answer from 20 marker point of view, not considering it as a 10 marker. So you might have written whatever you know, but I'm just trying to ensure that if at all some question comes which demands more amount of information from your end, then in that case you should be able to write it. So first you have introduced, right? So it is showing that there is deep rooted differentials that are present. Okay, so now if at all if you want to use some data, you have NFHS 5, right? So it shows TFR to be 2.0, okay, which is below the replacement level, and UNFPA, which estimated that there will be further decline to 1.9 despite the population momentum being 1.46 billion. So these things you should be aware. Now coming to the differential parts. So regarding the differentials, regional differentials, you will be writing. So they have said regional, caste, class, tribal, and religious. So first you write differentials regional. So if you see, there is north south divide with respect to regionals. South, if you look at Kerala, Tamil Nadu, these states have achieved replacement fertility decades ago. Okay, they have achieved long back. What is the reason? According to Dyson and Moore, okay, so according to Dyson and Moore, the south or southern kinship allows for greater female autonomy, and cross cousin marriages are encouraged. Because of that, there is reduced pressure, okay, to prove fertility. There is no pressure on the woman to prove her fertility. So this Dyson and Moore says that favorable kinship systems is one of the reason for no necessity of proving her fertility early and more number of children. That's why they achieved the fertility replacement ratio early. Okay, And even in the south, you notice long histories of social justice movements and land reforms, which created infrastructure for the female education and public health. Okay, you notice Kerala, right? So in the Kerala, you notice that there is increased education, and because of this reason, because of good education and good health, they have opportunity to study further, and this has reduced the fertility in the south. And in the north, if you look at, you notice the Bimaru belt, right? UP and Bihar, they have very high TFR. TFR is not below replacement. Though it is declining, it is not below replacement. Right. So, what is the reason here? Okay. So, I would say please do not type anything now. I am recording so that it will be helpful for others who are not able to attend. So, these messages are interrupting. Once it is done, you can please do it at the end. So, in the north, if you see, there are Bimaru states, and here agriculture is the main thing. So, it is labor intensive agrarian economy where children are considered as assets, and there is lot of patriarchal risk because there is exogamy, there is village exogamy. So now woman is coming from far away place, they are getting a bride from very long place. Because of that, she has her obligation to prove her fertility there. It's too much of patriarchal aspect. So again, one more thing, since it is agricultural system, or labor intensive agrarian economy, there there is son meta preference that you notice here, right? Even one of the economic survey has highlighted. So son meta preference, because they want to secure land and lineage. Okay, so even they have the children, but because they want to secure the land and the lineage, which they believe, they still continue to have children. So regional differentials you can talk in this way. And then coming to caste, tribe and religion. Okay, see, caste and class, if you notice the differentials, caste and class differentials, what studies that are conducted by Goli and Kriti. Okay, so you can go and search, you will be having very good paper. Goli and Kriti, they highlight that fertility differences, fertility differences within the caste group, within the caste group, you take same caste people, those who are rich, those who are poor, you observe them, you'll have too much of gap between them. Okay, and this is less than between the groups. So the gap is more within the group and less between the groups. Okay, I hope you have understood. Within the caste, there are two groups, there is more differences. But if you take two different castes, caste 1, caste 2, between them it is less different. But within the caste itself, high, rich and poor people have more difference. So now what they are trying to show, that caste is no more a factor to show differential nature. So previously fertility differentials, they used to talk in terms of caste, but no more. It is a factor of caste, rather it has become a factor of class. Okay, so you can notice SC, ST, OBC fertility rates are almost converged around 2.1 or even below 2.1. However, still they face a higher burden of unwanted fertility, because women do not have access to the contraceptive needs. At the same time, their contraceptive needs are unmet. At the same time, they lack agency. Okay, so they don't have the decision making authority, they don't have access to contraceptive needs, and there is structural violence that is involved. Because of these reasons, though they want to reduce their fertility rate, but still it is continuing. And now if you see, it has almost converged around 2.1. So there is no difference between caste with respect to fertility, but we notice it is with respect to class. Okay, so then again, I'm sorry if I'm taking more of your time, but I want to ensure that tomorrow you do not have to do things again for these topics. Okay, this is caste and class. And then if you see tribal fertility, you should have to view it through the lens of cultural ecology. Okay, so there was a study conducted by A. Maharatna in 2000. So what has been highlighted here is that the higher tribal fertility was historically an adaptation to higher infant and child mortality rates. Okay, so previously they were excluded from the mainstream society, and there was higher IMR, okay, infant mortality rates and child mortality rates. Because of that reason, for that adaptation purpose, they used to have higher fertility. Okay, but recent findings by ARF and Lassie, so the studies have suggested that certain pockets have higher fertility, okay, but it is not cultural refusal. So only some areas have that higher fertility rate. They are not refusing to contraception; they are accepting it. But in some areas, because of high mortality, children are dying, so they want to have more number of children so that they have survival of their own lineage. Okay, so that is one thing you can mention with respect to tribes. So we have addressed region, caste and class, tribe. Okay, then coming to religion. So religious differences, what has been observed, I have given you one example, right? Goli and Kriti. So the study has conducted by them in 2024. So in that study, what they have observed is there is declining gap. Okay, so there is declining gap, Hindu TFR and Muslim TFR. So Hindu TFR is at 1.9, Muslim TFR is at 2.4. And they have argued that, Goli and Kriti have argued that 85% of the fertility change from 1998 to 2021 is attributed to education, income, and access to family planning rather than religion. Okay, so anthropological view is that high fertility among Muslims is better explained by higher representation in the lower socio-economic strata and marginalization from state health services rather than theological pronatalism. So it is not theological reason, rather it is socio-economic problem. They are under lower socio-economic strata and they are marginalized from the state health services because they don't have education, income, access to family planning. So that is the reason they are having higher fertility rate, not theologically. That is what the finding has been highlighted. Okay, I hope you are clear with this. So once you write all these things, see, you might write in 1 or 2 lines, you need not explain in detail, but for your clarity I'm trying to give the detailed explanation. So you just write it in 1 or 2 lines, and then you can, okay, then you can conclude that anthropological studies have consistently identified the female education as the silver bullet for fertility decline. I'll take up any doubts if it is there at the end of the session. Okay, so what anthropological studies have consistently identified is female education, because there was a study by Brahma and Basu Matari. Okay, so 2024 they utilized NFHS data. These people, what they have done, they have utilized NFHS data to show female schooling and place of residence. That means the schooling of the female and the place, whether the female is in urban region or the rural region. So they have used this data to show that what are the most powerful predictors of TFR. It is not religion, it is not caste, but it is the schooling and place of residence. These are the most important things. Okay, so you can use, like, you have to link unit 11.2, that you study demographic theories. You study Caldwell's theory, right? Caldwell's theory. So, which states that intergenerational flow of wealth, education alters the intergenerational flow of wealth. So, the children transform from economic producers to economic consumers. Okay, so now in the initial days, they used to go to the farm to produce something. Now they are going to school, so they are becoming consumers instead of producers. Now when you are consumer, when your child have to spend, what will happen? You won't have many number of children, you will have less number of children because you are spending. Previously they are producing, that's why you are having more number of children. So this Caldwell's theory you can use to conclude. So you can also write, India faces a demographic duality. While nation has achieved statistically sub-replacement fertility, but there are certain struggles of specific regions and certain struggles of marginalized communities which tend to have still a further high replacement fertility ratio. Okay, so that you can write. I hope you are clear with this, and I'm going to the next topic. Critically analyze the demographic dividend concept. Okay, so concept of demographic dividend in India. See, again, with respect to this topic, UPSC did not ask much question, but I am very sure that either 26 or 27, I don't know, this has been one of the most trending topic in anthropology for discussion in the recent days. Okay, I'll show you, I'll share my screen later on to show you that these are all from the papers that have been published in the recent times. It's not randomly I'm discussing some question with you. So they have come up and they were discussing, there is Indian Anthropological Society, right? So in that society, all the scholars come over there, sit and discuss on an issue. So among them, these have been present. So that is the reason I thought like it is important for us to keep ourselves updated. Even if normal question comes, these all things, if you can code, that makes you an expert in your answer. Okay, so now here introduction, what you will be writing, then again you will be saying that UNFPA defines demographic dividend as economic growth potential resulting from the shift in the population age structure, right? This is what we learn in general studies. You can write that, what is demographic dividend, UNFPA. So you'll write that and you'll define basically. So shifting towards 15, when most of the working age population are within this range, then the demographic dividend is going to be high. So you can say that India is currently in a demographic sweet spot where the median age, okay, so the median age is 28 years, approximately 63% of the population in the working age. Okay, so we have approximately 63% of the population here. However, anthropologists argue that dividend is not an automatic economic gift but a structural opportunity. So what you'll write, it is not automatically economic gift to us but a structural opportunity that is heavily mediated. Structural opportunity that is heavily mediated by social institutions like caste, gender, and religion. Okay, so what generally it is said that economists say that youth bulge. Youth bulge means that increased number of youth will lead to more labor supply, more savings, more economic growth. But anthropologists look at it critically. Okay, so I'll tell you one of the important book. Okay, so time pass time pass, youth, class, and the politics of waiting in India. So this is one of important or very famous work. This was by Craig Jeffrey. Sorry, Craig Jeffrey. Craig. Okay. So here Jeffrey describes the phenomena of waithood. Millions of educated youth in North India spend years in state of educated unemployment waiting for the government jobs that never materialize, or especially that when highlighted with respect to number. So here this creates a subculture of waiting where youth energy is not converted into economic productivity but diverted into political volatility and time pass activities at tea stalls. This transformation or this transforms the dividend into potential source of social unrest. Okay, so this you can exactly write, because what you will say every time that you are going to write in the answer, that always that it is going to provide more labor, more uh, work, and because of that more economic growth will happen, but that's not the case. But we are looking at it very critically. And then one more sociologist, there is a sociologist known as Sonalde Desai. She also gives a very critical perspective of this demographic dividend. Okay, so there is the work, the missing half. Okay, she gives in the work that is demographic deposit, dividend, and debt. Okay, so here what she highlights is that the paradox of declining female labor force participation rate. Okay, so what she says is that Sonalde Desai argues that India cannot reap a demographic dividend with one hand tied behind its back. That means you are leaving the woman. Okay, so the paradox here is that despite education increasing, okay, there is rising education, India's female labor force participation has been historically low. Okay, so though some recovery is being shown recently, there is large distress driven self employment. Okay, so though there are women who is working, but they are under distress driven. It's not like they are having the employment altogether. So what says is that demographic debt. She argues that without resolving the care burden means women have to take care of the elderly and children. Without resolving this care burden, the demographic transition effectively traps women. Okay, so if women have to take care of the children and the elderly, they are trapped. They are no more going to work. When they are no more going to work, that means your half of the dividend, demographic dividend, is already in the home and not producing any economic growth for you. Okay, so the shift from joint families to nuclear families removes the support system, because now when nuclear families are increasing, the woman at home has to take care of the children, and the support system which was there for the woman to work is lost. And now the dividend that you are getting by having the people in 16 to 64 age, now they are spending most of the time at home and not at work, and because of that this dividend whatever is being generated is also being neutralized. Okay, and you can also see that you have two Indias, right? One is north and south, especially with respect to demographic dividend. So south is seeing the fall and north is seeing the bulge. This migration, like migration that is happening from north to south, can be understood through anthropology. So the mismatch necessitates the massive internal migration, and anthropologists note that when lot of people are going from one area to other, this leads to cultural friction. So this is one important term that you have to use, that is cultural friction and nativism. As young migrants from north move to the aging south for the work. Okay, so here you can give this point of view. Okay, and then you can also write regarding the caste and class, the skill gap. Okay, ks james ks james critiques the optimistic projections. Whatever we are saying that okay, India is going to have more number of people are going to work, because we are having 16 to 64, almost 28 years on an average age. But here the ks james has highlighted that there is employability crisis. Mere biological youth does not equal economic utility. You have youth, that doesn't mean that they have economic utility. Okay, the marginalized sections, SC, ST, often face exclusionary urbanization. They are left mostly in the informal sector with low productivity. So there is inequality adjusted dividend. So dividend is not equal everywhere. The dividend is unequal. Research indicates that the benefits of demographic shift are skewed towards the upper caste and urban classes who have the cultural capital to access high quality education. They are only going to reap this, not everybody. So this is what has been highlighted. So you can give this point of view also, because see, ultimately we are trying to give a critical perspective, that only not one side of view but the other end as well. Okay, so India has high burden of child stunting, right? So anthropological study of growth suggests that stunting is associated with reduced cognitive development and low economic productivity in childhood, low economic productivity in adulthood. Okay, so there was Barker's question last time, so which is directly linked to this. You can write here that in the childhood, if there is stunting, and later on in the adulthood you are going to face the reduced economic productivity, right? A stunted workforce cannot power a 21st century knowledge economy. That you can quote in the examination, that the dividend is compromised at the biological level before it enters the labor market. Now people, even before entering the market itself, we are compromised. So now this dividend, now the demography that we have from 16 to 64, is it a dividend or really, or is it a disaster? So as per UNFPA report of state of world population, India has overtaken China as the most populous country. However, without investing in human capital as suggested by Amartya Sen's capital capability approach, this dividend risks becoming a demographic disaster. So what all anthropologists say is that the dividend is time bound. Only till 2055 we have this. To realize it, the policy, whatever the policy that is there, that should shift from population control to population empowerment. So we need a shift in policy. Okay, so that is what is suggested. So I hope you are clear. Next, coming to the last question of the day. I'm sorry I have taken much of your time, but from tomorrow I'll try to finish it very quickly. So there was a delay today, and I'm sorry, as I could not accommodate more than 100 people in the session. Lot many people had to uh, you know do it by self. Now they might have to watch the video, but from tomorrow I'll find out some other way to accommodate all of you. So now the next question is how anthropological insights can inform. So this question, I think you can do it by yourself. I'll give some of the studies which you can quote there. But so discuss how anthropological insights can inform effective policies to harness the demographic dividend and mitigate the demographic risk. So there are two ways of asking. First, they'll ask critically analyze, then you can write this also. So now what you can write the same thing, while what demography does, there is traditional demography, right? You need not have anthropologists only, there are other people also who are studying the demography aspect. So the traditional demography focuses more on the aggregates. Okay, so it tries to focus on the indices and everything, aggregates of fertility and mortality. But anthropological demography, you have anthropological demography which emphasizes why behind these numbers. Why is it low, why is it high? So there is a scholar DeWitte, as noted by DeWitte, policy interventions to harness the demographic dividend often fail. So policies generally fail when they ignore the specific socio-cultural, economic and political contexts. So, therefore, anthropological insights are essential to bridge the gap between abstract, the traditional demography, so abstract demographic targets, and on ground human behavior. So, from the anthropological lens, if you see how they're going to help you, you can say that demographic behaviors are not just biological events, they're not just the fertility, mortality, but they are social acts, right? So you can see one of the scholar Kurtzer and Fricke argue that age sex structures you cannot study in isolation. Age sex structures when you are studying, because in GS you will be studying the maps, right? Sorry, graphs. So age sex structures. So these you cannot study in isolation. You should study in combination, or you should take a holistic approach combining inheritance rules, kinship systems and household structures. So then only you can understand it. Okay, so a policy designed for nuclear family which is in the western context may fail in joint family agrarian setting where high fertility is a rational strategy for labor and old age security. Okay, so this was highlighted by the same thing Basu and Abi. So sorry, Basu and Abi says that what you see in the west may not be equally applicable to in the in the India, because their conditions are different. For them fertility has a different rationale, and in India we have a different rationale. Okay, so the policy implications are going to be very high if you don't take socio-cultural aspect into consideration. And you know that the policies which ignore the local preferences, so this was highlighted by Polgar. So he said that there is cultural resistance, and in the North India you have son meta preference in patrilineal societies, which gives rise to skewed sex ratios rather than stabilized population. Why? Because there is cultural resistance. So if you don't understand that, then if you try to frame a policy, there is no point in it, so you can't execute. So the anthropological lens becomes very important, and henceforth you can, whatever we have studied previously, you can write them, or else we have I have made some more scholars also which can help you understand. Okay, so first of all what they say is that education is the driver. Education as the driver. So we have seen that education is more important, and you should be focusing on that rather than age structures, and this has been highlighted in the previous studies also. Okay, and there is gender dimension as well, emphasizing the female education, which is the silver bullet which we have already discussed, and context specific interventions. That means you should not, anthropology says that one size doesn't fit all. Henceforth, in a heterogeneous society like India, local realities has to be focused. So you have Waldegi or GIS. Okay, so in 2023 highlights that or suggests effective policies must be tailored to local gender norms and local economic structures. Okay, so that's why don't have one size fits all, rather keep it context specific, local specific, and take a integrated approach. So growth at all also highlights that there is a need for integrated approach, advocates for integrated development where family planning is not a standalone medical intervention. Okay, you can't look at family planning as one separate thing, you should look at it as a part of broader package. Job creation, digitalization, all these things are interlinked. So anthropological view of health as a social determinant aligns with this view. Okay, so anthropologists view that health is a social determinant, you should take care of health as well. So what they suggest is that go for rights based approach. Jeetal Baston and Snow 2025 argue that demographic dividend is best realized through good governance and social protection rather than coercive population control. So, coercive population control won't help. Rather, good governance and social protection is going to help. So, go for rights based approach and build resilience. Invest in health infrastructure and build resilience against pandemics or rapid aging, ensuring that dividend doesn't turn into demographic burden. So these are all the anthropological insights that have been given by different people. So where you can write that you need to look at it holistically, look at context specific, use the human capital, give education, female education, and at the same time go for the governance in such a way that you are empowering them and you are protecting them socially. The governance is good rather than coercing in the population control. Okay, so after writing this you can conclude saying that anthropological insights serve as corrective to purely econometric models of population. So you have purely econometric models, right? So now these anthropological insights will help in correcting those things how they are looking at. So by revealing the complex interplay between culture, that is norms and values, and structure, economy and governance, anthropology ensures that demographic policies are not just statistically sound but socially sustainable. So we don't need statistically sound policies. What we need is socially sustainable policies. So anthropology ensures this. How it does? By having a interplay between the culture and the structure, norms and values and the economy and governance. It links both of them. By doing that, it bridges this gap and helps the policies become the better for the demographic control. Okay, so you can also quote, I have already told you, Basu and Abi. They say that harnessing the demographic dividend requires policies that are sensitive to cultural context as they are to economic indices. Okay, so it should be both the ways. And now I'll take your doubts. Thanks for listening to it patiently. Okay, so I'll take up your doubts now.